In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 226 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is You Always Have a Choice. Our quote of the day comes to us from Deepak Chopra. No matter what the situation, remind yourself, I have a choice. Today's episode is sponsored by Kahn. Your journey is your story. Kahn is a lifestyle jewelry brand that simply exists to embody your unique personal journey and remind you that no matter how difficult life can be, anything is possible. Be the dream, be the change with Kahn. Follow at Kahn Life, QAN, and support the mission at kahnlife.com, QANLIFE.com. It is an honor to bring you today's episode. We all encounter obstacles and challenges, and our guest today is no different. In 2015, while pregnant, Christine McAlister lost her daughter Maeve, and she faced a tough choice. She chose to make a positive out of that incredible loss, and today she continues to pay it forward for others. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Christine, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris.
I appreciate it. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
You know it.
Awesome. So our mission is to both pay it forward and inspire and encourage people to never give up on themselves, their goals, and their dreams. And I was hoping you could share either your no-quit story with our listeners or perhaps a challenging time that tested you when you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Absolutely. I think for me, they're one and the same. So just a little over 4 years ago in early 2015, I was expecting my first baby. And I didn't know if I was having a boy or a girl, and it had been a perfect pregnancy after having some trouble getting pregnant and having some miscarriages. So it had been a perfect pregnancy, and all there was left to do was put my feet up and wait to go into labor. The car seat was in the car. And I went to a routine doctor appointment, and they couldn't find the baby's heartbeat. And I went straight from that appointment to being told, I'm sorry, your baby has passed away. You're going to need to go directly to the hospital to be induced to deliver this baby. And that turned my world upside down, as I'm sure anyone who's listening, whether or not you're a parent, can imagine. I delivered a perfect baby girl, named her Maeve, and had to say goodbye to her that same day. In the wake of that tragedy, I realized that I had some choices to make. My life was going to be defined one way or another by this experience. And I chose to find a way to make some positive meaning out of this, to find a way to, as you say, pay it forward, to help other people in this situation, and to take a hard look at my life, what I was doing, the way I was showing up, how well I was using the gifts and talents that I had been given, and to really align myself fully to a vision, to work, and to giving and serving in a way that I would be proud of, in a way that made impact, and in a way that created a legacy for my daughter that I hoped she would be proud of as well.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you sharing that tough story, and I'm sorry for what you had to go through. And I think it's remarkable that you took that mindset. I guess the natural follow-up question for that would be is how did you, or what did you do, or did you speak to somebody that allowed you to go ahead and turn that into a positive? Because I know for so many people, it's obviously a devastating thing, but I think it's amazing. I'm just curious as how you mentally tack that head on.
Before losing Maeve, I was a very proud, independent person who had a really hard time asking for help, classic high achiever. And I realized that the only way I was going to survive this is if I said yes to offers of help. So there were people who wanted to bring us food after we came home from the hospital. And I said to my husband, we don't need food. We don't have a baby to take care of. Like, I physically can cook. And he said, Christine, people just want to do something. Let them do something. It's not about the food. They know there's nothing they can do, but they want to help. And so I said, okay, right? Because I'm exhausted and just didn't want to argue about it. But what I realized is that even that small gesture of accepting help from people, guess what? I really didn't feel like cooking. I felt like laying in bed and crying, And I think even that small experience showed me that accepting help was okay. And it was helpful both for me and the person giving the help, right? These very basic lessons that it had taken me decades and decades and decades to be open to learning. And it really had taken me losing Maeve. And so that was a simple gesture. And of course, I sought the help of counselors and therapists and just really was open to people giving suggestions. There's an amazing retreat center called Faith's Lodge in Wisconsin that serves families who've lost a child. And my husband and I went there and made ourselves available to getting this kind of support. And then on the professional side, I hired my first coach and mentor to help me figure out what I wanted to do with my career, and then to have the accountability, which I know you're big on,
Yes,
to actually carry it out, right? Because up to that point, I had gotten as far as I could on my own. I was running a successful business. I was booked out, but I knew it wasn't the level for me. And I also knew that, I was comfortable enough. Until Maeve died, I wasn't uncomfortable enough to change anything. And I got the most uncomfortable I could possibly be and was willing to make those changes. So I finally lined up the support, high level support, to make it happen. And the combination of all of those things is what's brought me to where I am today.
Well, I appreciate you going into the depth of your answer, and I think it's remarkable on a couple of fronts. And I know me personally, back when I was in my teens and 20s, the idea of counselors or therapists or even coaches and mentors for me was something that was almost forbidden in some ways, and I didn't realize it until my probably late 20s, early 30s, that it doesn't mean that you're weak or it doesn't mean that you failed. It's empowering, where you say, you know what, I want to get better or improve, and I want to get some help from people that have done it and understand it. So I commend you for doing that. And I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just telling our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you're doing today.
Yes. So my name is Christine McAlister, and I'm the founder of a company called Life with Passion, where I help high achievers to make six figures, quit their jobs, running businesses that they love. My background is I was a college professor, undergrad and graduate. I was a career counselor, and I've always been a small business owner since I started my career out of school. And so when I went through this experience of losing Maeve, I looked at all these talents, these natural gifts, my zone of genius, what I call the 3 Ps, your personality, preferences, and passions. And I said, how does this all go together to help me serve in the greatest way, to make the greatest impact? And what came out of that was this company, Life with Passion. And that's why I do what I do, is because I believe we all have these unique gifts. And I think that one of mine is helping people bring it out and then put the smart strategies around it to create a successful business online. And one of the biggest things that I take a stand for is helping people overcome the self-doubt that holds them back from starting these businesses, because we're all smart here. We all can find the strategies on our own, but just like I experienced, most of us don't implement them when we're dealing with procrastination, perfectionism, self-doubt, or a belief that it's not practical, or these things we've grown up hearing. And so I really take a stand. I disagree with that. And I really take a stand for helping people to live a life that they are proud of, right? Not one that someone else expects of them, not one that is the practical thing to do, not one that's waiting for retirement. So that's why I do what I do every day. And personally, I am mom to an angel, as you've heard. I have two, what we call in the lost community, rainbow babies, two little girls who were born after Maeve died. And I'm also a proud animal mom. I have two rescue dogs and I have Arabian horses. And I live in horse country in Kentucky.
I I don't think you do enough. I think you should add some more things to your
I
plate
know,
there.
definitely.
So I'm curious to get your answer to this question. If you had to define yourself, but you could only use one word, what word would you choose?
Passionate.
It's interesting, when you talked about the three P's, we actually have three P's on our logo underneath it, and our three are positivity, persistence, and prosperity. So I think it's cool that you also have your
I
own.
love those. I need 6 P's now. I'll just add your 3.
Awesome. So I usually save it for the end, but you brought it up just as it is one of our favorite topics, the word accountability. I was curious, what does accountability mean to you?
This definition has really evolved for me. So I love this question. I think that when I was in high school, it was like accountability partners. It was helping to stay on track with things like homework or like matters of faith or, being true to who I wanted to be. And so it was peers. And that works for some things, but what I have found really, really works for me, for my clients, for my friends and colleagues is accountability where there's some kind of serious skin in the game and where there's not a relationship that gets in the way. Because frankly, my husband's never going to be my accountability partner, right? That just is setting us up for a fight. And so what I have found works best is when, for me, skin in the game usually looks like paying someone. And so I got to pay somebody enough that it's painful if I don't do what they say, right? That first I find someone I trust and that has what I want and that I haven't been able to get on my own. And then I need to invest something in my own life, right? And say, okay, I'm investing in myself because I believe that I can get this result if I show up for it enough. And that to me is the accountability that has worked best personally and for the people I find myself surrounded with, both as clients, as friends, as people ahead of me.
I love that, and I think that's so key that you touched on, and I appreciate your candid and honesty in the sense of not having your husband be it, because one of the things I often talk about from a stage about an accountability partner is it's not somebody that you're friends with or a colleague or a coworker or a family member, and it could be in some ways, but that's not in any way the most important aspect. We define the most important aspect as somebody that's really going to push you, challenge you, but also hold you truly accountable to those things or thing that you need to. But I love how you identified it and you defined it with having some skin in the game, because I think that's the importance, and that's why accountability partners in different areas of your life work, is because you are committing to somebody else and they are committing to you. So I'm really, really glad you touched on it. And I wanted to ask and get your perspective on the word success and what success means to you or what it looks like to you.
I think that we are living in a time when success is so much more redefinable than maybe it was a generation or 2 generations ago, where the possibilities that have opened up to us to be able to really, really and truly define our own version of success. They've never existed before. And I really think that our DNA and our mindsets, many of us, haven't quite caught up to this idea that we can truly design our own lives, right? We have access to everybody else who has internet access in the world. And we can build a business in the smallest niche and have it be wildly successful, that we can work part-time, that we can travel and live remotely, that we can do these things. And a lot of times we talk ourselves out of it because of stories we've been told or beliefs that we have. But I believe that success is figuring out what's important to you and then designing and actually carrying out a vision to live that way, as opposed to what I think a previous definition of success, and one that a lot of us, I think, still walk around with or struggle to let go of, is this idea that what I heard growing up was, well, if you have success, extreme success in one area of your life, other areas suffer. And I believe that doesn't have to be the case anymore. I believe that we have the ability to achieve success in the areas that are important to us and have it be more than one where we can be congruent to our values without other ones suffering.
I think that's a great definition, and I love that question because there is no right or wrong answer, and it's always very interesting for me as well as the listeners to hear what the guests say, because it is such a open question with so many different opportunities. And I could not agree more with you in the sense of the opportunities and the availability with technology. I mean, you could literally be sitting across the world and talking to somebody in a totally different time zone, totally different country, literally within seconds, whether that's audio or video. And I think the opportunity to get knowledge, to get information, we have the ability to download it or have it on our device or computer within seconds. So I totally agree with that. One of the things we often look at is the morning routine. And I was curious if you yourself have either a morning or a daily routine that you swear by.
Yeah, I know, like you, I am really big on gratitude. I believe very strongly in proactively creating an outlook for the day, as opposed to waking up feeling how I'm feeling and going with it, because I tend to be an anxious person. I have that genetically, and then also, I think, as a high achiever, I can very easily get worried about the next thing, about not doing enough, about what's on my to-do list. And so what I found I have to be mindful of is waking up and immediately taking charge of, taking responsibility for reframing my thoughts and choosing the way that I want to think and feel about the day. And so for me, that looks like gratitude. I love to journal. I am a writer. I'm an author. And so writing comes really naturally to me. And from there, I find that I allow myself to pick and choose based on what I'm feeling or needing that day. I really like to identify or confirm the big focus that I have for that day. Work-wise, I really like to carve out this time to do this in the morning when it's still quiet before kids and life and dogs and everyone come rushing at me. And I find that a quick meditation or a quick tapping session, EFT, if you've ever heard of that, can do wonders for helping me to walk into the rest of my day on purpose, as opposed to reacting.
I'm so glad you touched on that, and that's something that we often look at is the difference of being reactive versus proactive with your day. And I think one of the things we often digest in some ways with our guests is the importance of not picking up your phone. Now, I want to say that is I'm not talking about not touching your phone at all, because a lot of people have alarms or a meditation app that's the first thing they'll do, and they have to touch their phone. So I want to be clear, and I'm not talking about not touching it, but in regards to checking emails or social media. But it's so key when you go from being, or you change your mindset from being reactive to proactive. And I loved how you said the last thing, which is walking into your day, kind of how you want with the mindset and the frame. But I love how you start your day. So you touched on something kind of interesting that I wanted to just mention for a minute is you're an author, and I know you have an offer of a free chapter for your book. So I wanted to just see if you wouldn't mind telling our listeners a little bit about that book and where they could find it as well.
Yes. So my book is called The Income Replacement Formula: 7 Simple Steps to Doing What You Love and Making 6 Figures from Anywhere. And it is a book I wrote after helping 75% of my clients and counting to quit their jobs. And I thought, okay, there's something here. All these people are doing different kinds of businesses. They are coming from different backgrounds or different ages, but something is working over and over and over to help them with the simple strategies and the self-belief to walk away from a job and do their own thing, do something that they're passionate about, and make the kind of money that they want to make doing it. And so I outline those 7 steps, and sneak peek, I also give you an extra chapter 2. So it's not just 1 chapter, it's 2 in this book, so that you can identify where you are and you can know exactly what the next step is for you to focus on, if this is something that you desire, something that you want to explore. And so you can get free 2 chapters of The Income Replacement Formula at lifewithpassion.com. audible.com/free chapter. I also recorded the audiobook myself, so it's on Audible, or you can pick up the full book on Amazon.
Awesome. How was it doing the audio yourself?
It was a blast. It was something that I knew if I'm ever going to do an audiobook version, I have to be the one to do it, because I love doing things like live streams and like you speaking. And I was a theater nerd in school. And so I love to perform. Even though I'm an introvert, I love to perform and I love to connect with people in that way. And so I hired a friend of mine who is a great sound engineer. And I said, let's just make this as fun as we can and let's capture who I am, right? And why I wrote this book, so that it's fun to listen to while you're learning, because there's no point in doing this if we can't make it fun. That's the whole point. That's life with passion, right?
No, I could not agree more. A good friend of mine, Damon West, he's actually in the process of recording his, and he's put up some videos and things of him recording himself. So I think that's really cool when you get to do it yourself.
Yes.
So speaking of books, I was curious if you are reading something currently or if you've read something recently that you'd like to possibly recommend to our listeners.
One of my favorite books for opening up your mind of possibility and going back to the version of success that we were talking about, beginning to believe that that's possible for us, is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. It's been out for several years, but when I first read it, I thought, this idea is revolutionary. This opens up a world for me that I continue to use in my work today. Several years after reading it, I revisit it every year at least once. And I just so appreciate the message of how to truly thrive on all fronts and how to move past these definitions of success that are outdated and that hold us back from fully experiencing the kind of life we want.
I love how you talked about rereading it at least, or revisiting it at least once a year. It's something that I didn't really, not I didn't understand, but it's something I didn't do myself until the last year or two. And so many of the guests have said the same thing, that they have a book or two that they will reread at least once a year, or they'll go back. And the other thing that really stood out to me is how that book resonated with you. And I think that's one of the reasons, selfishly, why I like to ask that question, because books obviously stand out to people differently. And a book where I might think is amazing and incredible, you might say it's an okay book, and vice versa. But that's why I love asking that question, because I'm always looking to add value to our listeners. And I think it's really interesting when you talk about a book that really resonated so well with you, to the impact where you'll revisit it once a year. So I'm glad you touched on that. Wanted to ask you kind of an interesting question that I'm curious to get your responses. Is if you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself only one piece of advice, what would that be?
To go for it. I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was pet sitting and baking cookies and selling them at the front of the neighborhood from the time I was in elementary school, of side hustling, I guess you would call it. And I was really clear in college that I wanted to have my own business, but I didn't have the path. I didn't have the plan. And more importantly, I didn't have the confidence and the belief that I could go out there and do it and not fail. And so I did what you're supposed to do and got jobs, and all the while continuing to side hustle and going, why are these other people able to do it? Why have some of my friends that I admire never had a real job? Why can't I do it? What's wrong with me? And it was that combination of the lack of belief in myself, the fear of failure, and the lack of a clear plan. And if I had somebody who I really trusted to walk me through this process at 20, it would not have taken me over a decade to get to running a business that truly is serving in the way that I feel is part of my highest gifts to offer. And so at that time, like that person in the middle of college, I would say, just go for it. Like, make the plan now, get your clients. When I was a professor, I had students who were paying their tuition at a private university and room and board by running their own company at age 20, right? So now I'm looking back, I can see that that's possible. At the time, I didn't. And that's what I would change.
I think that's great advice, just very similar to obviously the Nike slogan of just do it. I think it's advice that we all could have taken at a different point. If I could magically give you the opportunity to have dinner tonight with anybody, dead or alive, who would you pick?
I love this question. I would have given you a very different answer 5 years ago and mentioned the people that have inspired me or some historical figure. But today I know that I would have dinner with my daughter, Maeve. I would love to see what color her eyes are. I would love to hear the sound of her voice. Those things I didn't have the opportunity to do. And to get to know her as a person, her personality, her passions, right? Her preferences, all of those things. That's the hardest part of having lost a child, before you ever got to know them. And I would love to have that opportunity over dinner.
I think that would be an amazing dinner, and it would probably be many, many hours of just you and her having a wonderful time.
Yes.
So wanted to ask you, I know you mentioned, but what's the best way for listeners to connect or follow you? Is that just the website that you mentioned before, if you wouldn't mind mentioning it again? And also, are you active on social media as well?
For sure. So you can grab that free chapter at lifewithpassion.com/free chapter. I always love to connect personally with people. I have an Instagram, LifeWPassion, and I'm on Facebook at LifeWPassion as well.
Awesome. And then last question I have for you is if you have some parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
I would say this. You're listening to this because you want inspiration and motivation to never quit and to live the life that you want. And I would remind you that no matter where you are today or what you've faced, you always have a choice. Always, always, always. You have a choice no matter what you've been through or what you're going through right now. Have a choice with how you're going to look at that, how you're going to let it define you, what you're going to do with the experiences that life has given you. And if you remember that, you will stay empowered. And I believe that will help you to never quit.
I think that's great advice, and I truly appreciate you sharing what you did with us today. I think it's remarkable how you took such a tough experience and you led it into the next part of your life. And I hope you and I can connect again soon.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity.
Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. Thank you for listening to episode number 226. Christine is quite an impressive woman, and her strength is both admirable and extremely encouraging. When we discussed her morning routine, she was adamant on the importance of walking into your day on purpose and how it sets you up for success. When we discussed accountability, I loved how Christine spoke about having some skin in the game and investing in yourself. In her parting words, Christine stressed the reality that no matter what we are going through or what we have been through, we all have a choice. So as we end today's episode, I pose that same question to you. What choice will you make? Will you focus on the negatives and what went wrong? Or instead, will you focus on the positives and everything that you have to be grateful for? So as you go for your greatness today, make a choice that no matter what comes your way, you'll remain optimistic and take positive action. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.